In the summer of 2021, after American troops withdrew from Afghanistan, the country again fell to the Taliban. The event reminded the world of the horrors of terrorism. What is less known, however, is the close relationship between terrorism and communism. Communism is about class warfare and violent revolution. It holds the extremist view that in society one class oppresses another. To overthrow the ruling classes and liberate mankind, terror is seen as a necessary tool. The first recorded use of the words terrorism and terrorist was in 1795, describing the reign of terror during the French Revolution. In his 1919 book, Terrorism and Communism, Marxist theorist Karl Kautsky stated that the Bolsheviks, a radical and revolutionary Marxist faction led by Soviet Union founder Vladimir Lenin, had taken on the terrorist characteristics of the Jacobins. Marxist-Leninist regimes rely on terror and instill fear to seize and maintain power. Infamous examples include Joseph Stalin's Great Purge, Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution, and the Cambodian genocide under the Khmer Rouge. And the September 11th terrorist attacks brought worldwide attention to Islamic extremism. Most people know about Osama bin Laden and his terrorist group Al-Qaeda. But few know that Islamic extremism can be traced back to a man called the Karl Marx of radical Islam. At first, it may seem far-fetched to suggest that there is a relationship between communism and radical Islam. After all, Muslims believe in Allah and communists are atheists. However, the theory and methods of modern Islamic extremism are actually quite similar to those of Marxism-Leninism. The pioneer of what is today known as radical Islam was an Egyptian man named Sayyid Qutb. He was liaison for the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood to the Communist International and the Communist Party of Egypt. Qutb's writings influenced many Arabs, including Abdullah Azzam, one of the co-founders of Al-Qaeda. There is a saying among Islamic State supporters: the Islamic State was drafted by Sayyid Qutb, taught by Abdullah Azzam, and globalized by Osama bin Laden. Qutb's main strategy was to pursue violence to destroy the old society dominated by Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah means the age of ignorance, referring to the period before the advent of Islam. Qutb called upon Muslims to lay down their lives in the fight against Jahiliyyah. The idea of using violence to destroy the old society mirrors the Marxist idea of class warfare. According to Qutb's theory, the old society of Jahiliyyah was forced upon the people, robbing them of their freedom. Qutb said that those who were enslaved, just like the working class mentioned in Marxism, had the right to overthrow their oppressors. Qutb advocated jihad, the Arabic word for struggle, as the means of liberating all of mankind. In his 2013 book Islamo-Communism, The Communist Connection to Islamic Terrorism, Charles Moscovitz also noted, the real enemy confronting the free world remains communism. Radical Islam is nothing more than communism cloaked in the traditional garments of Islam. After Al-Qaeda's devastating attacks on the United States on September 11, 2001, internet forums and online chat rooms in China were filled with celebratory remarks such as, "Good job," and "We strongly support these acts of justice against the United States." According to a survey of over 90,000 users on the Chinese web portal NetEase, only 18% of respondents expressed strong opposition to the attacks. Meanwhile, a majority viewed those attacks positively and considered them a challenge to U.S. hegemony, saying, "The best is yet to come." This overwhelming pro-Al-Qaeda and anti-American sentiment within the Chinese population underlines a dangerous friendship between Chinese communists and radical Islamic regimes. Before recapturing Afghanistan in August 2021, the Taliban had ruled the country from 1996 to 2001. According to a United Nations report, the Taliban conducted 15 massacres during that period. In 1998, the United Nations accused the Taliban of denying emergency food to 160,000 starving civilians for political and military reasons. As of October 2021, at least 14 of 33 Taliban ministers of the new administration have been designated as terrorists under a UN Security Council resolution approved in 2011. In August 2021, just days after the fall of Kabul, the Chinese Communist Party launched a whitewashing campaign for this UN-designated terrorist group. At a press conference on August 19th, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying dodged a question about whether China would recognize the Taliban regime. Instead, she suggested that the Taliban be treated not only on the basis of what happened in the past, but also on what is happening now. She added that the Taliban today is more sober and rational than it was during its last administration. At the time of the press conference, video clips were already surfacing on social networks and in the media, showing Taliban terrorists pulling people from their homes and executing them in the streets, as thousands of Afghans fled the country. China's state-run mouthpiece CCTV broadcast a video titled, "What Exactly is the Taliban?" It portrayed the Taliban as an anti-corruption group that was supported by poor Afghans. Not a single word mentioned the Taliban's horrific crimes against the people of Afghanistan or other parts of the world. The CCP's history of supporting radical Islam goes back decades. In 1998, after the United States attacked al-Qaeda with cruise missiles, the CCP allegedly paid Osama bin Laden $10 million for unexploded missiles, presumably to reverse engineer the technology. In December of that same year, the official Iranian news agency reported that the Taliban had reached a defense cooperation agreement with the CCP. In the Chinese-language book Unrestricted Warfare, published in 1999, two Chinese military officers discuss a hypothetical attack on the World Trade Center in New York. The authors not only named al-Qaeda as an organization able to carry out such an operation, but also mentioned Osama bin Laden several times. One cannot help but wonder, were the 9/11 attacks premeditated and scripted by the Chinese Communist regime and then implemented by al-Qaeda? If not, how could a book so accurately hypothesize an event that actually materialized 2 years later? According to a Chinese propaganda film titled Attack America, this is the America the whole world has wanted to see. Blood debts have been repaid in blood. America has bombed other countries and used its hegemony to deny the natural rights of others without paying the price. Who until now has dared to avenge the hurts inflicted by unaccountable Americans? According to the Washington Post on September 11, 2001, yes, the date is correct, China signed a Memorandum of Understanding for more economic and technical cooperation with the Taliban. According to a Western diplomat, at that time, China had the closest relationship with the isolated Kabul regime of any non-Muslim country. Days after the 9/11 attacks, American intelligence officials revealed that two Chinese telecom companies, ZTE and Huawei, were helping the Taliban install a telephone system in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. ZTE and Huawei have been at the top of sanction lists as national security threats during both the Trump and Biden administrations. The BBC and other sources reported that even after the September 11th attacks, the CCP supplied the Taliban with surface-to-air missiles, anti-aircraft guns, landmines, rocket-propelled grenades, and parts for roadside bombs, as well as large-caliber sniper rifles and millions of rounds of ammunition. Some of these arms were shipped to the Taliban directly from China's factories. Now, following the Taliban's recapture of Afghanistan, the CCP is collaborating with Kabul on construction of the Peshawar-Kabul Highway, which will connect Pakistan to Afghanistan. This planned highway makes Kabul a participant in the CCP's massive infrastructure and investment plan, the Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese Communist regime is also building a major road through the Wakhan Corridor, connecting China's western province of Xinjiang to Afghanistan and onward to Central Asia. In exchange for the CCP's investment in the region, Kabul has kept its mouth shut on the CCP's mistreatment of Muslims, including Uyghurs with close ties to the Taliban. The Chinese Communist Party promised to provide a further $31 million worth of food and supplies to the Taliban. In addition to the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, Communist China has also maintained a long-term and friendly relationship with several other terrorist groups and regimes. These include Palestine, Iraq under Saddam Hussein, Syria, Sudan, Iran, and North Korea, just to name a few. The Chinese Communist regime's backing has included sales of weapons and military technology, personnel training, infrastructure projects, financial aid, and the obstruction of UN sanctions. This support has not been without reason. Terrorist attacks against the United States and the ensuing U.S. war on terror have benefited China profoundly. For more than a decade, the U.S. had focused its diplomatic, military, and intelligence resources on the Middle East. Meanwhile, Communist China has quietly grown and prospered, following Deng Xiaoping's strategy of hiding its capacities and biding its time. Only 1 month after the 9/11 attacks, then U.S. President George W. Bush announced the establishment of a cooperative relationship with the CCP. This came not long after Bush's depiction of the CCP as a potential enemy and strategic competitor while he was campaigning for the U.S. presidency in 2000. Ironically, in order to fight its war on terror, the U.S. partnered with the world's largest terrorist state. 2001 was only the third year into the CCP's now decades-long ruthless campaign to eliminate Falun Gong, a peaceful spiritual practice that became popular in China during the 1990s. While the U.S. was busy responding to the threat of terrorism, the issue of human rights in China was sidelined. During this period, the Chinese Communist regime's massive crimes against humanity received minimal attention in the West. In fact, the CCP even referred to the years during which the U.S. could not afford to focus on China as a strategic opportunity period. China's economic and military rise over the past 2 decades has a lot to do with global terrorism. Communism and terrorism have worked synergistically to make the world a more dangerous place. In order to win the war on terror, it is thus vital to have a deep understanding of the playbooks of both communism and terrorism, and to tackle the problem from the root cause.